With this release and the new way that invoice charges and payments are structured, we've created a brand new revenue by date report for you all. We're super excited to show you how this report works and talk about the information that it displays. To be able to view the revenue by date report, your user account must possess the left-hand navigation, reports and more icon, groups permission for can view financial reports. Once you've got that enabled, you can access this report by heading to left-hand navigation, reports and more icon, reports, and use the search bar to find the revenue by dates report. This report can be generated for any date range. Let's go ahead and look at today's date in our demo application here. Once we select our date, we'll click Generate Report to pull up the results. Now we'll see a few sections on the report. Let's go over each of them. First, we'll see our payment type summary and our invoices charge summary. These two sections are going to provide you with totals for both the invoice charges opened during the date range, as well as all payment and refund events that happened during the date range. The payment type summary includes totals for your payments, which includes collected deposits, deposits that were collected for future reservations that have not yet checked out, prepayments, non-deposit payments that have been applied to estimate invoices, and payments, which are all payments applied to open invoices, including consumed deposits. Following that, we'll see our refunds, which includes totals for refunded payments and refunded deposits over the date range. We'll also see a net total for these sections, which is calculated as total payments minus total refunds. You can see that this summary is paired with a chart to visually display each of these sections. You can hover over the bars on the chart to see what percentage each section makes up of the total value. Below the payment type summary, you'll see the invoice charges summary. This section includes totals for all invoices opened within the date range of the report, including the subtotal charges, which is a subtotal of the line items charged broken out into taxable and exempt amounts, tax charged, which is a sum of all tax charged per line item on each invoice opened during the date range, tips added to invoices, refunded items, and refunded tax on each invoice where a refund occurred during the date range. We'll also see a total for this summary, which is calculated as total charges, tax, and tips, minus the refunded items and tax for the date range. You can also see that this summary is paired with a chart to visually display each of these sections. You can hover over the bars on the chart to see what percentage each section makes up of the total value. Before we move on to the following sections of the report, I want to make a note on these two summaries. In the switch to invoicing, we've provided a number of new ways for you to take payment on invoices. It's important to remember that invoice charges are finalized and recorded when you check out the reservation or the item, and payment is recorded separately on the date that payment was collected. Because payment can now be taken at any time in the form of prepayment, payment at checkout, or post-payment, you may notice that the totals in these two summaries don't match exactly, which is expected. This report provides all of the information that your system records for invoice charges and payments and allows you to pull the numbers you need depending on how you do your books. When we scroll down on this report, we'll see more details on the numbers provided in the summary, starting with the invoice charges section. If we open up this section, we'll be able to see our invoice charges for this date range broken out by either account codes or by line item type. You can use the information in these sections to see where the totals and the summaries are coming from. As a side note, if you don't already have account codes set up in your app, we would highly recommend doing so. This feature allows you to break out your revenue by type, think daycare, boarding, grooming, etc., to easily see your performance in each account. There's documentation on our support site for setting this up, which you can do today ahead of this launch. So moving on the charges by account code section, we'll be able to see a breakdown of charges, coupons, and refunds done per account code. The charges by account code section breaks out your pre-tax invoice charges by account codes. The total from this section should be equivalent to the subtotal plus tips charges in the invoice charges summary above. The coupons by account code section is already figured into your charges by account code totals, but serves to provide more detail about which account codes coupons are applied to. The Refunds by Account Code section lists out your pre-tax line item refunds per account code. The total in this section should match your refunded items total in the Invoice Charges summary above. If we click over to the Charges by Type section, we'll see the same charge information broken out by line item. The totals from the charge sections for reservations, additional services, retail items, packages, open line items, store credit purchases, and forfeited deposits are pre-tax and should match the subtotal plus tips totals from the Invoice Charges summary above. The Refunds by Item section will list the pre-tax total of all items that have been refunded and should match the refunded items line on the Invoice Charges summary above. Next on the report, we'll see more details on payments using the Payments and Refunds section. Similarly to the detailed charges section that we just talked about, you have the option to see your payment and refund information in this section, sorted by either type or by invoice detail. The Payments and Refunds by Type section provides a detailed breakout of payments and refunds in a number of ways. The Payments by Payments Method section breaks out all payments received by payment method. This will include all prepayments, payments, and deposits collected during the date range. And the total in this section should match the total payments amount in the payment type summary at the top of the report. The Deposits section is going to break down your deposit activity during this date range. This includes collected deposits, consumed deposits, and forfeited deposits. The Collected Deposits section includes deposits that were collected during the date range but not yet consumed, forfeited, or refunded, and should match the collected deposits total in the payment type summary at the top of this report. The Consumed Deposits section lists deposits that were used at payment towards an invoice during the date range and are included in the payments total in the payment type summary at the top of the report. It's important to remember that deposits are converted to a payment when they're applied towards a reservation at checkout. Lastly, the Forfeited Deposits section includes deposits that have been forfeited on canceled reservations. Forfeiting a deposit will add a corresponding line item charge to the invoice for the amount of the deposit, which the payment is applied towards. This total is included in the payment section of the payment type summary at the top of the report. The next two sections provide detail on refunded payments during the date range. The Refunds by Payment Method section provides totals of refunds done during the date range, split out by payment method. The total in this section will match the total refunds amount in the payment type summary at the top of the report. The Refunded Deposits section provides detail on deposits that were refunded during the date range. The total in this section will match the deposits refunds amount in the payment type summary at the top of the report. Lastly, in this section, you'll see a card brand breakdown. This section is similar to what you see on today's revenue report and serves to break down integrated credit card charges by card type, Amex, Visa, MasterCard, etc. This section doesn't return any details in our demo because we're using fake card numbers, but this will return real data for you guys upon release. Next, the Payments and Refunds Details section provides a detailed breakout of payments and refunds by invoice so that you can see the payment or refund amount on the invoices involved. The totals in both of these sections will match those of the payment type summary at the top of this report. Now that you have an idea of where both the payment type summary and the invoice charge summary are pulling their data and know how to read the charges and payments and refunds sections of this report, we can scroll down further to see the corresponding full results sections. These sections are exportable and allow you to get a spreadsheet of the invoice charge or payment details for the date range. Now that we've gone over each of the sections on this report and showed you where all the data is pulling from, I hope that you're all really excited to get to use this new report upon release on August 1st. If you have any revenue reporting questions, go ahead and use the Q&A function to send those in so that we can be sure to answer them at the end of the webinar. For the last section of the webinar here, I'm going to turn it back over to Patrick to talk about the end of day report.